Our body's always been under attack. It's so much easier to sell only 90 calories versus only 45 ingredients. One of the biggest fraudulent cases that we have in this country was we were told to count calories and not look at ingredients. Start eating steak and avocado and potato. Watch how much more full you get. Watch how much more satiated you get. Watch how much more energy you get. These are the things you have to understand. These are the things you have to start to do. These are the levels of depth that you have to start to go to bring awareness to what you're in. So number one is read the ingredients list. Know the ingredients. Know what you're putting in your body. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Own It Show. I'm your host, Justin Rothling-Schofer. And if you're new here, welcome. So good to have you. And I really encourage you to go back and listen to the other 300 plus episodes that we've done on this show, all with the mission to educate and empower you to take ownership of your health so that you can realize a different reality. And if you've been in tune with the last few episodes, we've really dove deep into what is this food thing looking like? What are we actually ingesting? What are we being exposed to? We had Dr. Rodriguez on last week, really talking about what's happening in the medical field and why have we started to see the results that we've been given? Why have we started to dive down that road? And then the week prior, we really started to uncover some real harsh truths and realities as to what's happening with the integration of pharma, the integration of our lobbyist groups and our government boards, as well as the processed food industry and how interseeded they are, ultimately in an incestuous way that's causing us to be sicker and sicker and sicker and profiting on both the front end and the back end of it. And so I've really wanted to just kind of get that out there. And if any of those episodes have been really encouraging for you, really uplifting, really eye-opening, I'd love for you to share them. I would love for you to comment and rate this podcast so that it can reach more people. Because to be honest with you, as we've put a lot of those out, we've seen the YouTube views go down. We've seen the reach of the podcast go down organically from just different ads that are being blocked. It's really crazy to start to see what happens when you start to call out what is actually dysfunctional in our society. And so we're going to continue to keep our pedal to the metal, because the more that I can empower you, the more that you can go empower those that you love and those that you see and those that you touch every single day to create a real change, because that is how this country is going to heal. That is how this country is going to change. And that is how this country is going to change the epidemic of chronic illness that we ultimately see every single day. And that's our mission. That's our mission to own it. That's our mission here on the Own It Show podcast, is really helping to empower you, the individual, because I don't care who's in power. I don't care who's president. I don't care who's prime minister. I don't care who gets put into the Senate. I don't care who gets put at the head of the decision-making processes. It is up to us. It is up to you. It is you have the ownership. There's no white knight coming. You are the person that has been created for a time such as this, as long as you're willing to take ownership, as long as you're willing to do something different. And so today we're diving into really what does it look like to start to really read and understand a nutrition label, because I know you've got your maybe kindergarten, maybe grade school education on reading a food label. You might have had somebody else who's talked to you about it in the past, but I want to take you again on the history of why this matters. And there's going to be a couple things I'm going to say that are going to be like, oh my gosh, I never thought about that. Oh my gosh, you are so right. Oh my gosh, it's a paradigm shift for me. Because when we start to realize the paradigm shifts that are happening, when we start to realize what is actually under our nose, it gives us so much more power to realize that, my gosh, I can simply make a different decision. I have the power to simply read. I have the power to simply look at a package. And so what I want to go through is, what does this look like? And so I want to take you back to the story. And I remember this is 2 episodes ago. And when we started to really look at this concept of, hey, 1909, there was the Faulkner Report that really changed the thought process of, hey, what are we actually doing from a holistic health standpoint? Anything that's holistic is pseudoscience. Rockefeller created that. But I want to take us back to 1945 for a second, because end of World War II, coming into the 1960s. And in the 1960s, what ended up happening was that they started to market cigarettes as a weight loss component, a way to create an appetite suppression. So we could actually lose weight. It was targeted towards women primarily, but men bought into it as well. We could suppress appetite. We could lose weight. We could look better. We could look fitter. We could look healthier by smoking. And that was the advertisement. That was the marketing side to this. Now, what I want you to realize is that our lives, our livelihoods, our health has always been under attack. Always been under attack. Because if you hear me talk about like 1960s and hey, smoking is like this great thing about how we lose health or how we lose weight and actually look better. Well, it's no different than 2024. Hey, you know what? Take Ozempic. You're going to look better. You're going to lose weight. You're going to actually look fitter. Well, that's actually not true. Internally, it's actually diminishing our lean muscle mass. It's actually creating less dense bone mineral, shortening our bone mineral density. That's what I was trying to say. So we're actually getting fatter because we're losing more muscle mass and more bone density at the same time of losing fat mass, but we're not losing it in the speed and the proportions that are necessary in the appropriate ratios. Oh, by the way, use this low-fat yogurt that has 19 different ingredients in it. That's going to help make you look better. That's going to help make you lose weight. Our bodies have always been under attack from the desire to look a certain way, meaning that we can sell you anything that is going to sell you on a promise in order to get there. So if we go back to the 1960s, the two guys that actually did this were R.J. Phillips and Philip Morris. So these two guys who controlled 85% of the cigarette and tobacco company, that was their goal. That was their marketing piece. So now we fast forward to the 1980s. Remember, I talked to you about the Surgeon General made them put down there this cancerous carcinogen that was creating cancer through smoking. So all of a sudden, everyone's in an uproar going, wow, this was like the weight loss thing, and now it's causing cancer, and now it's causing all of these lung diseases and all these issues. And what did they go and do? They bought up all the food companies. And so what they started to do with the food companies was they actually created low fat, low calorie, high chemical, high ingredient list options that were more addictive and cheaper to make. And so they basically did the same thing because it is so much easier to sell only 90 calories versus only 45 ingredients. And so when you start to come back to this, the biggest, in my opinion, one of the biggest fraudulent cases that we have, one of the biggest facades that we have in this country was we were told to count calories and not look at ingredients. Start eating steak and avocado and potato. Watch how much more full you get. Watch how much more satiated you get. Watch how much more energy you get. Watch how much weight you lose. Watch how much lean muscle mass you gain. It is very difficult to overeat on whole foods. But what happens is we have these low calorie alternatives that ultimately don't fill us up, don't keep us satiated, spike glucose levels that keep us wanting more, that keep driving us in the direction, and ultimately change the inner biochemistry of our body. And so our body's always been under attack. And so if we look at this, I have to go back to this quote, like, don't miss this. It's easier to sell only 90 calories than only 45 ingredients. And we fall for it all the time. I encourage you, if you're listening to this podcast while you're driving, don't do this now. If you're listening to this podcast while you're working out, don't do this now. But if you're in your home right now, if you're walking through your kitchen, if you're sitting in your backyard, if you're out for a walk, as soon as you get home, go into your cupboard and start to look at some things. Start to look at your nut mixes. Start to look at your cereals. Start to look at your breads. Start to look at your yogurt in the fridge. Start to look at your almond milks. Start to look at the cheeses. Start to look at the types of meats. Everything, and I say that emphatically, everything has these chemicals and coloring dyes and artificial sweeteners that you just don't even understand. The seed oils. It's not until we get really purposeful that we can actually create some change, that we can actually do something that is different, that we can actually realize how do we take ownership of our health. And so when we start to lean into this, the ingredients list has been something that we've far overlooked, because when we've looked at nutrition labels in the past, what we've been looked at is, hey, what are your carbs? What are your proteins? What are your fats? What does that look like on a nutrition label? And we're like, hey, that looks really good. That's where I should be. That's ultimately what I should ultimately be looking at. Great. But here's the sad thing, is that we've actually missed out on the boat. We've missed out on what actually matters. It's not the proteins, fats, and carbohydrates. Yes, that's important to a certain extent, but it's the ingredients that we're ingesting. It's what are we actually eating? What are we actually putting into our body? What are we actually experiencing and asking our bodies to digest and our cells to operate with? Because remember, you're a synergistic, holistic being that is taking 20 billion cells and bringing them all together, so that they can digest all the foods, they can bring all this together so that we can start doing what is necessary. And so this is where I want to come into today, because it is critical that we stop looking so much at the proteins, carbs, fats, and calories and start looking at the ingredients list. I pulled up a few things here because I've been on the road for the last 25 days giving a bunch of different talks, and it's been really cool to see the aha moments in people. And when I go around to these different groups, a big thing that I've been asking them to do is send in, like, what are the top 4 or 5 foods that you've been eating, or the top 4 or 5 things that you ingest every single day that you think are healthy. And so I'm going to pull them up here because the number one thing that I've been getting back, actually, it's not a food at all, but it's a hydration product, and it's liquid IV. And so everybody's been like, oh, liquid IV, it's great. It only has 45 calories in it. It's a hydration product. It helps me with electrolytes. That's what it's all about. It goes right back to the same thing with, like, Gatorade. Gatorade is a great electrolyte. Well, actually, if we pulled up the ingredients list for liquid IV, here's the first 3 ingredients: pure cane sugar, dextrose, and citric acid. 3 of the first 3 ingredients of a hydration product of an electrolyte mix is sugar. And yet they advertise it as only 45 calories, a hydration multiplier. That's what they advertise it as. Coke owns them, not surprising. And then once you get down, then the 4th ingredient is salt. The 5th ingredient is potassium citrate. Then the 6th ingredient is still sodium citrate. So it's a different type of salt, but a cheaper salt. And then you get into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different ingredients that I can't even pronounce. Silicone dioxide, rubisobutide A, dipotassium diphosphate, natural colors, and red 40. So we've got also a red 40 in there. Instead, what I talk about, and I start to really emphatically just help people understand, is if we went with something like Element, LMNT, or we went with Redmond Relight, or we went with AT, or some hydrational product like that, you go into the actual ingredients list and it's sodium, potassium, magnesium. 3 ingredients, that's it. So which one do you think is actually going to hydrate you better? Which one do you think is actually going to work better? Which one do you think is actually going to operate and actually get you where you need to be? Now, I will tell you that Element probably tastes a little bit more salty and is a little bit more pungent than your liquid IV, which tastes more like a Gatorade. But they're going to get you in that area all the time. And it's what matters to you, your health or how something tastes immediately. And they're actually getting much better at making things taste better. The second one was there was a certain nut mix. And this nut mix has come back over and over and over and over again. And it's a trail mix. And when you look at this trail mix, I just find this really funny. For one serving size, 28 grams, they have 340 calories. Okay, 340 calories. That's how they sell it. But then what they also do is they confuse you because they put a dash on it and it says 150 calories right next to that. And if you look really closely at the really fine print underneath, it says per serving, but this is an individualized satchel, like a little individualized packet. And then the 340 says per packet. And so first off, they're catching with 150. Oh, only 150. That's okay. But then that would be like not even a palmful of what's in this thing. Well, why? Because let's go into the ingredients list. Peanuts, milk chocolate. Milk chocolate consists of sugar, cocoa butter, milk powder, soy lectin. Then you got raisins, almonds, cashews that are covered in sugar. And then they've got the following artificial colors: blue 1, blue 2, yellow 5, yellow 6, red 40, and then all covered in vegetable oil that is made up of cottonseed oil, sunflower oil, peanut oil, and soy flour oil, and soybean oil. Finished off with sorbitol, phosphoric acid, and methylprobonal corn syrup. So we start to think about this. And something that we thought was healthy, a trail mix, is actually hurting us. When instead we actually go over and we look at something that is very different, which is just a plain nut mix. And this nut mix has in its ingredients list raw pistachios, pecan halves, raw almonds, and walnut halves and pieces. And you look, here's the wild thing. You look at the calories if you really wanted to. 57 grams, double what the other one was, for 360 calories. So it has approximately the same amount of calories for double the portion because it doesn't have all of those crap ingredients. I want you to hold on to that thought process for a second, because remember we talked about when you're actually eating whole foods, it becomes very hard to overeat in calories. It becomes very difficult. And thus, if we just focused on eating clean, ingredients. And we got rid of all these chemicals. We got rid of all these seed oils. We got rid of all these artificial colorings. We got rid of all these sugars. It would change the way in which we felt, in which we operated, in which we were able to actually take in food. The next thing that I got that's so often there is like Cheerios. I don't know why Cheerios pops up because, again, this is one of the biggest scams. You go and look on the front. They've got this lower cholesterol, heart healthy stamp. And General Mills owns them, obviously, one of the big 10 I talked about a couple weeks ago on that podcast. But if you go into this, General Mills paid over $500 million over the last 4 years to the stroke and heart health certification. So that's why they get that on there, is because they've paid to have it there. Not only are they putting money towards the USDA, not only are they putting money towards the American Diabetes Association, but they're also putting it towards this Stroke and Heart Health Association. Like, this is amazing to me. Like, the conflict of interest here is so gross. And I believe it was 3 or 4 years ago, they made a change to their ingredients list. Whole grain oats, cornstarch is number 2, sugar, ingredient number 3. Sugar, ingredient number 3 in Cheerios. And you start to look at this, you start to think about this, and tripotassium phosphate is ingredient number 4. And I should mention this, tripotassium phosphate exists inside of different products simply to try and mitigate the impact of seed oils. Just something for us to know, just something for us to realize, just something for us to think about. And so this becomes really, really critical. Well, at the same time, there's another granola company. People are like, granola's so good. Granola's so great. And man, I wish I could remember. It was like Audrey or Auntie Anne's, or it's something. It's again, it's organic, and it's shown as a healthy granola. Well, you go to the ingredients list: organic certified gluten-free oats. Great, that's amazing for the first one. Second one, organic coconut sugar. Third one, dried blueberries. In those dried blueberries, those blueberries are made up of blueberries, cane sugar, and sunflower oil. The fourth ingredient, organic sunflower oil. The fifth ingredient, organic puffed amaranth, hemp seeds, flakes, chia seeds, cinnamon, and salt. Those other ingredients are great, but there's 4. There's 4 different things. 2 forms of sugar and 2 forms of seed oils in this highly qualified product. Versus if you come to something like mush, I don't know if you've ever heard of mush. Mush is this protein overnight oats. And they're amazing. They're incredible. And they're privately owned. They do everything themselves. I know the owner. He lives out in Denver. He's incredible. He's a good guy. And you would think about this. You look at this, the ingredients list: coconut milk, rolled oats, dried blueberries. The blueberries contain blueberries and apple juice concentrate and sea salt. That's what's in this. That's what's in this. And this thing tastes amazing. And so we could either go with the Cheerios or this granola, or we could go with something like mush. And then I hear about these yogurts, and even like this So Good yogurt, right? Like it's only 80 calories, 12 grams of protein, only 4 carbs, 0 grams of sugar added. Well, that's great. What does this look like? Here's the funny thing. On the side, in very small lettering, it says an asterisk. It says, not a low calorie food. Weird. But you market it in big, bold letters with big circle, only 80 calories. You look at the ingredients list: culture grade A filtered non-fat milk, strawberries, strawberry puree, and then you have gelatin gum, stevia, red 40, vegetable juice, vitamin D3, and different cultures. You've still got artificial coloring and stevia, which is an artificial sugar. Conversely, you come over to something like Siggy's, cultured pasteurized milk, agave nectar, Madagascar bourbon vanilla. Like, you literally have real vanilla in here. So you mean vanilla yogurt has vanilla in it? It's like mind-blowing, right? Like mind-blowing. And so these are the things that we have to start to look at. These are the things we have to start to be aware of. These are the things we have to start sitting into. There's 2 more things that I want to go over here, because a lot of people, and you heard the story with Dr. Rodriguez yesterday or last week, and he talked about the chickens, and we have to talk about the same thing with the beef. Is grass-fed, grass-finished is no longer what we think it is, because grass-fed, grass-finished, you can be eating grass from a trough while being in stalls, while locked up in cages for chickens and beef and cows. What we have to now look for is grass-fed, grass-finished, pasture-raised. That's what we have to actually start looking for. That's what we have to start being in tune with. That's what we have to start being really critical with everything that we're looking at. The next thing we have to be aware of is we have to get used to who owns the products we're using, who owns them. Because my guess is that a lot of the things you use are actually of the Big 10. And when we think of those Big 10, we come back to General Mills, we come back to Kraft, we come back to Johnson & Johnson, we come back to these different companies that are owning the majority of these things, PepsiCo, Coke. Because there was a couple products, and I pulled them up, that I really, really liked. I don't know if anybody remembers Garden of Life. Garden of Life was a company literally built with the Garden of Eden on it. It was literally built around a Christian company. Good morals, good values. And they sold to PepsiCo, or no, pardon me, they sold to Nestle. They sold to Nestle. And originally, if you looked at their ingredients list for their protein, it was something we got all the time for our players in the NHL. It was amazing. It was great. It had like 4 different ingredients. As soon as they sold, it went from 4 to 14 ingredients. So you look at it today, and there's sprouted and fermented pea and brown rice protein, buckwheat, organic blend, erythritol, natural flavoring, stevia, MCT oil, coconut powder, oat milk powder, coconut milk powder, insulin activia gum, xanthan gum, ganar gum, and then a couple prebiotic blends. And so they have all of this stuff that's now been put in that wasn't in there before. And as soon as I saw that ingredients list, I was like, my gosh, no wonder we're feeling this way. The next thing, I don't know if you've ever eaten Siete chips. Siete was my jam. I loved them. They were amazing. An Austin-based company. They did such great things. And their ingredients list in which they made their tortilla chips was cassava flour, avocado oil, coconut flour, chia seeds, and sea salt. That's what was in it. 5 ingredients. And then they sold to PepsiCo. And instead of avocado oil, safflower oil. And so you have to be so aware of these. And so you're like, okay, Justin, these are great. I now need to look at the ingredients list. Really, really critical. But what can I do for a tortilla chip? Masa chips. Masa chips are great. Organic corn, 100% grass-fed beef tallow. That's what they're baked in, and sea salt. 3 ingredients. Non-GMO, gluten-free, vegetable oil-free, and naturally nixtamalized. Making sure that's the process of crunch. And so that's where we need to go. Okay, Justin, where can we start to eat? When you go to your grocery store, make sure you're looking at the ingredients. Make sure you're really understanding what's in them. If there's things you don't understand, remember, the chemicals that you're ingesting are not just chemicals. They're things that your body has to now deal with. They're things that your body has to now process. They're things that your body has to now go and work through. There's some place called Thrive Market. Thrive Market is amazing. Primarily all small market and small business companies that are all food companies, food and beverage companies, trying to do the right thing. Great values, great morals, trying to keep you healthy. Very minimal ingredients. And here's the other thing I will tell you, and I'll call it out right now. Not every small business, not every small food company, just because they're not owned by those, doesn't use these chemicals as well. So having to read the ingredients list is so critical, because at the end of the day, it's easier to sell you something low calorie than it is to tell you and sell you high ingredients. It's no different than the Keto Flex. It's no different than the Paleo Flex. It's no different than the non-GMO. It's no different than the gluten-free. Just because they say these things doesn't mean that they're great for you. Look at the ingredients list. Is it 2? Is it 4? Is it 40 ingredients long? Is there 5 ingredients that you recognize and another 10 that you don't? Is there 5 that you recognize and you actually understand what they are? These are the things you have to understand. These are the things you have to start to do. These are the levels of depth that you have to start to go to bring awareness to what you're in. So number 1 is read the ingredients list. Know the ingredients. Know what you're putting in your body. Understand it. You go and look at your breads. When you go to your bread department in your grocery store and you look at the ingredients list, 9 times out of 10, it's going to have 25 different ingredients for something that should have flour, water, and yeast. Maybe some seeds of some type if you're having a multigrain bread. If it's a sourdough, man, the sourdough starter just keeps on going. So if they're putting something else in it, it's a big alert. So first thing you got to do, look at the ingredients list. And if the ingredients list is long, if the ingredients list has things you don't have it that you don't understand in it, step away. And then number 2 is be aware of who owns the majority of the companies that you're buying from. Who owns them? Because remember, they're big food, big pharma, big government, all interceded together. And at the end of the day, the companies that you're buying from were the same companies that told you to count calories, not look at ingredients, and the same companies that said that smoking was a great weight loss drug or a great weight loss solution. So you have to start to be educated. You have to start to sit into this and realize what you're doing. And when we can empower you, that's when you can change the world. When we can empower you, that's when you can change the game, because you have ownership, nobody else. So guys, as you go forward, check the ingredients list, know where your food is coming from, who owns them, and make sure that you're willing to step in and do something different, because we know success is different. Own your different. We'll see you guys next week.